theme here. I know that the markings, you know, there's a lot of that at the moment, and thank you for those of you that have been able to balance it and also make it to this session. So tonight we're following on from all the work that we've been doing this year on building learning power, but rather than taking in all the different learning habits and thinking about how we're going to share these with students, how we're going to do all the things that we mentioned earlier, we thought it'd be really nice, having had a chat with Martin and Julia and Anna and myself, to choose just one. And so we thought tonight will be, the focus will be really looking at the habit of learning, the curious learner, and how we can, within our subject areas, really develop that habit of curiosity, which we know is so valuable to students' learning. So here we have all areas that would seem to be covered under the title of curiosity. It helps with independence and deeper learning, differentiation, questioning, thinking, engagement and behaviour for learning. So it's a really important one that encompasses so much. Just a little exercise, an exercise to expand your curiosity and get that mind, that habit working. We have an image on the screen, hopefully you can see it. We might want to turn that corner light off as well. This exercise can work for any subject area. You would choose your image. I've got some other images we can look at in a minute. This is an art one. And to start off, you might want to expand that curiosity learning habit by saying 8 to 10 questions. What do you want to know about this image? So to start us off, in your groups, one person scribes. I'm going to give you a minute. Can you think of 10 questions, any questions at all? What do you want to know about this image? So the idea is, well, let's get some feedback back. Let's see what some of your questions or things you'd like to know more about this image. The back table. Can anyone share from that back table? David, what have you got there in your questions?
I said it slow.
Yeah. Any other questions? Just roll them all out.
How many people live there?
Yeah.
Where is this location? What angle is it taken at? Who do the faces belong to? Is it multiple images?
Okay, lovely. All right, let's hear another. I mean, I'm not going to answer them tonight, but I'm really pleased to see that you're curious and you thought of some really good questions to find out more about this image. Let's hear from the other table at the back. Francis or Rosemary?
Right, just to go to ones that we've gone before. Why?
Yeah?
What are the eyes looking at? What's the inspiration behind? Is it real? Is it your thoughts?
Yeah? Okay, really good questions. I'd love to talk to you about that because I do think this artist is really, really interesting, but I won't tonight because we haven't got any time. But the idea is that this sort of starter, or it might be at the beginning of some new topic that you want to introduce, to really get them thinking before you're even going to introduce things, letting them to expand and grow the curiosity for the subject before you begin. I thought I'd just put some slides up so that you can see that it's, you know, you would choose your own stimulus, but I tried to think about what could work for maths and geography and design technology, and perhaps the same artist again, RE. And this one here, love this quote, I have no special talents, I'm only passionately curious, by Einstein. And I thought that that could be for English, but actually we could use it in art, we could use it in many subjects. So that was just a little starter for us. One other thing that I thought I might share with you is this idea that at the start of lessons, we might ask the question, I saw an example of this at the Wren Academy, where you might lay out, so it's a science lesson, you might lay out the equipment that's going to be used during the course of the lesson. But instead of sharing the learning objective, you will say to the students, what might today's learning be about? And then they will have a look at what you're presenting to them and begin to be curious about what this lesson, what the learning objective, what they might be expected to do with these materials. So just, you know, sharing these things with you, you might begin to see opportunities for using some of these things to develop the habit of curiosity in your lessons. Now,
hello, we're the Learning Research Committee. We're a group of students from Year 9 to the 6th form with a passion to learn more about learning. The purpose of our group is to research, to help and to improve learning at LSU. We've been looking at psychological aspects of learning and educational psychologists' work such as Carol Dweck and Matthew Said. One of Carol Dweck's main ideals are mindsets and how mindsets matter. There's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Unfortunately, many students develop what's called a fixed mindset. They believe that their intelligence is something that's inherited and they can't do better and they can't develop and expand on it. So for example, some of my friends have received work and said, well, I knew I wasn't going to get a higher grade or any better than her because I'm stupid and I'm dumb, and that's not what we want our friends to think or feel. Students with a growth mindset actually believe and recognise that their intelligence is something that can be developed. It is something that is developed, and they have to work hard, and through hard work and dedication they will reach their goal. They may not start with the result that they want at the beginning, but they work hard, they'll keep going, be resilient, and they will get their result at the end. A child with a fixed mindset still may believe that they're really smart and they have really high level of intelligence, but they won't do as well as a child with a growth mindset because they don't want to keep working harder. They think that that's it, I've got it, I'm born with it, and they won't keep developing and working harder. One really powerful example to me was Ramble in the Jungle, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Now, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman are two very talented heavyweight boxers, but George Foreman had the heavyweight title, and he was up against the title with Muhammad Ali. And everyone thought Muhammad Ali was going to lose. His training team thought he was going to lose, but he won. And even though throughout the game he was losing, he still won. But that's not the reason why I want to talk to you about this today or remind you of this. The reason why I want to tell you about this is because after this happened, 3 years later, George Foreman had another match and he lost again, and then he retired. He just quit the game. He said that he had a religious awakeness and just left. But throughout that time, Muhammad Ali was saying to him, no, you don't leave this game a loser. You come back, you fight and you win, and you leave this game and you retire from this game a winner. And I think that's something really powerful that students should always have with them. Something that Raniel said was that she talked about how we learn, but curriculum is something that we also touch on. It's about what we learn, and that's something that we want to look at in the future. We've been looking at certain effects that a school life can have on students and parents. Some effects that it can have on students is that it can encourage them to think they aren't clever and that it can lower their self-esteem, and it can cause stress due to reports and tests and things like that. The things that can also affect parents is that they become more and more interested in reports and grades, and can sometimes cram their child into thinking that grades only matter and their interests don't matter that much. Since our last presentation, we've interviewed year groups, and this really helped us to gain knowledge about how many people actually had a fixed mindset. We've also been having meetings with Miss Evans and Miss Taylor. Miss Taylor helped us to learn how to do research properly and how a focus group can really help you to develop a questionnaire. We've also shared our ideas with students and teachers in our spare time, which gave us time to reflect on what we've actually been learning through this process. Our next stages are continuing with the questionnaire and possibly set this for the teachers as well. We really want to present our findings in assembly, and we've also had these 2 ideas of including what we've learned in PSHE lessons and visiting other schools to see what they know about learning. I was actually fortunate enough to attend a Fabian conference with my father, and I met Estelle Morris. and I'm hoping to include some of the things she said into our research and into our meetings.
Go ahead.
I can't believe I got the spot after the girls. But I've got a request, not a question, a request. It's to your head teacher. Can I take you round with me to all the other schools in Camden? Because I reckon they would really love to hear and see that presentation.
Yeah.
Across the road, we've got William Ellis and Parliament Hill, all developing, you probably know this as well, yeah, all developing along similar themes. And I think this is the way forward, where you've got students who are actually leading on this and presenting on this. So that's brilliant. So we'll come to an agreement on that. Maybe I can get a bit of commission. We'll work something out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about building learning power in Camden. But before that, I've put some pictures, turn them over on each table. I'd like you, the instruction is to have a look at the picture in silence on your own for 30 seconds. I'd like to sort of volunteer.
Piano.
Sorry?
Piano.
A piano, okay. Anything else?
I saw a friend in need.
A friend in need?
Yeah.
Anyone else like to offer? Yes? Melancholy position, is it? Oh, a musician, sorry. Yes?
Come 1930s, poverty, depression.
Oh, depression, so...
I thought First World War, so I don't know why.
First World War. Anything else?
Really in a hospital.
Could have been in a hospital. So where it was.
I see a limited palette.
Some sense of like dark.
Some sort of darkness and so on. Sometimes people talk about fear or suffering or anxiety. It doesn't matter really, because the issue is everyone's right. Yeah? And I think that the purpose that I put that on, it leads to curiosity. But what I like about that is that you're just encouraging students, pupils to have a go. And that idea that actually there's no, you're removing mistakes from that. And I think this is a key thing, and it links to growth mindset. The idea that some people are afraid to take the next step because they're afraid to make a mistake. And the growth mindset that Dweck talks about is actually saying that we need to find strategies to overcome that. In fact, we can learn from our mistakes. Now, I mentioned William Ellis and Parliament Hill, and here. What you'll also be interested to know is that a number of primary schools are really developing this whole area of growth mindsets and building learning power. Rill and Carlton, down the road in Queen's Crescent area, have done enormous amounts of work on this. So, just before Christmas, Carlton Primary School was inspected, and they had 6-year-olds going up to the inspectors, not just able to say, I was resilient today, but able to say, I was resilient because this is what I did when I was stuck. And the inspectors were blown away by this. So what the schools have started to do is to unpick some of that language. What does it look like to be resilient or resourceful, or to reflect on something? And the pupils are getting this. They're getting it. And then the schools are incorporating it into their feedback, to feedback with parents, into their report cards and so on and so forth. So it's become very powerful, a very powerful language. And parents get this. Parents really get this, and they really like it. So that might be something else to explore. They do it through all sorts of ways, very visual, lots of prompts, lots of questioning, things like struggle walls. A struggle wall in a primary school. A struggle wall shows something that might have gone wrong. So a classic example of a struggle wall was where some pupils were making a picture frame and they got it wrong. And that's displayed on the struggle wall. But what's displayed alongside it is, what we learned from this was we needed to be a bit more careful with our angles and so on. Until it got to the final display, which was the accurate picture frame. So all it was actually visually giving pupils strategies to move on and to learn, rather than just displaying the finished article, which is what a lot of schools do, the beautiful picture or the poem or the story or whatever. It actually was displaying the learning process. So that's about unpicking learning habits. In Regent High, they've actually incorporated a system which really focuses, they moved away from behaviour for learning to looking at effort. And I know lots of schools look at effort and so on, and say, I'm really looking for effort today. And they started to unpick, what does effort look like? What am I actually looking for? And it's linked to behaviour, basically, it's learning characteristics. So 3 things in my lesson today that I'm looking for might be good questioning, reflecting on someone else's responses, and some example of curiosity. I don't know, but it could be, you could probably think of another 20 things, but they're building that into every single lesson. In William Ellis across the road, in their marking, they've got a merit system, like most schools, and apart from some of the normal expectations that you would expect to see in that, they've got curiosity written into that. So if students show curiosity in a lesson, that is recorded down. So it's very current, it's very topical, and the students that you will be getting next year, presumably you get some students from some of the schools I mentioned, but students are coming with this language. So I think that's quite important. I think that it doesn't just end at secondary school. But it's also backed by a lot of research. And a lot of the research talks about the power of language in this, and Carol Dweck talks about effort quite a lot, and you can Google her experiments. But even just slight shifts, I'm going to pick on you, because I know you. But if I say to you, the task we're going to do this afternoon will be very difficult.
Oh no.
Oh, we haven't rehearsed this one. That feels a little bit...
No, I'm not feeling very
No.
Very well.
Action. So, what we're going to do this afternoon, it could be a bit tricky.
What might I do to get over that?
We didn't rehearse that, but we're brilliant. But it's just little shifts. Okay, maybe I'll hand it up a little bit, but it's just shifts between tricky and difficult. A lot of research has gone on in schools about the amount of times in a school day the word work is used. Get on with your work. Have you done your work? Finish your work. And so on. And even as adults, we have this sort of negative connotation where I can't go out, I've got work tomorrow, or I've got to prepare for work, oh, it's work, and so on and so forth. Let's see how often we can substitute the word learning for work. That's just a suggestion. Yeah? And actually, you can't say, have you finished your learning? Because you haven't finished your work yet. No one's finished their learning. And there's lots of examples of that. Could be language rather than is language. We often say, what is the answer? And sometimes, for some students, they are not going to offer an answer. They're not going to say anything because they don't want to get it wrong. What could be the answer to that just invites that. And that's just one of the differences about subtle shifts in language. And finally, the final example I'm going to share now is from Carol Dweck, and Carol Dweck's favourite word. And Carol Dweck's favourite word, a very little word, is called yet. So when a student or a pupil says, I can't do it yet, and it just sort of allows that possibility. So that's quite a nice little way of just sort of encouraging, there's no such thing as can't do it, just yet, and that's her favourite word. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Martin. Well, just to reflect. I can see people write this down too, and a few things you said there I think we can use instantly. I really like the idea of rewarding. We give good marks in this school, we reward good behaviour, but maybe we see more coming through for showing curiosity in the lesson. That would be really great to give some good marks for that. I love this idea of substituting the word work for learning, and I'm certainly going to try
learning for work.
Learning for work, of course, that way around. And there could be And the yet, I mean, I do try and use that as often as I can remember, and it's about really trying to go ahead with these things as soon as we can tomorrow, before we forget about them with everything else that we've got to keep doing. It's so urgent.
For some, it's just that little bit that might shift. It might shift a student for just a little bit along that road.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you for that.
Starter, from a starter. Now the reason I'm saying that is because, yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? Brilliant. The reason I'm showing is because the sort of things I try to do with kids is in starters also happens throughout the lesson, and it's a way of explaining something about art by referring it to other subject areas, because you often get, I imagine, probably more so than a lot of subject areas, you do get this fixed mindset. I've actually heard some of you saying to me, I was rubbish at art at school. So obviously you start off with that, then you're not going to get anywhere. So it's about trying to pull it up from under the feet there, making them understand that it's not art, it's actually seeing. Now this here is a photo. The reason I've got this here is a photograph that one of my students, which is year 13, Isabel Freitas, she wanted to make a hand. One of the sort of cross-curricular references we make really often is about the golden section, golden ratio. Maths teachers know all about that. And so I'll try to explain that to her, because she's got her fingers wrong, so I'll try to explain that to her. And I'm saying, well, if you look at the tree, look at the distance between the way branches get shorter as they go along, all fits into that ratio. Exactly the same as your finger there. And I was walking down the passage, just by sheer coincidence, she was walking towards me. And she actually did want to make a hand to come out the ground. She was walking towards me, and I found a twig, just like a little twig on the ground. This isn't the actual twig, it's in my other jacket. I don't throw things away. But it was funny because she just walking towards me and I saw it. So I picked it up and I put it to my finger. I'm going to pass this round, you can try it. The distances here correspond almost exactly to your finger. So I'll pass that round you, I'll look at it while I'm talking to you. Now, as I say, it's about bringing things in that they know subconsciously. They are aware of the gold section, but they don't know what it is. But if you explain the way a TV screen's split up when someone's on the news, it fits into it absolutely perfectly. So that's just one example of it. What I want to show you just now is a little thing that I do with my year 7s, and they love it. They find it really easy. I can see there's a lot of middle and senior management here, so you're going to really, really struggle with this. Now the reason you're going to really struggle with it is I'm going to ask you to do something that's completely alien to you. I want you to stop thinking. I don't want you to do anything. I'm not going to ask you any questions about this. I'm not going to ask you to write anything down. I'm asking you to do something really simple, and all it means you have to do is you have to switch off, stop thinking, a little bit of mindfulness, and I want you to stare at the bit of paper in front of you. You've got a bit of paper, but before you start it, I hadn't finished it. See what I mean? I told you to struggle. What I'd like you to do is there's a few little coloured squares. They might not be squares, you're not getting tested on this. Nothing. Just want you to stare at it. Take one of those, I want you to put it in the middle of your page, and I want you to stare at it. You can blink, don't take your eyes off it, and don't stop staring till I tell you. Okay, I would like you to move it out of the way and see what's behind it. Well, why on earth would you want to do that? Well, the one to do this is I do this in the introduction to our Year 7 project on colour. So it's to try to teach them a little bit about, just to pull the rug from under the carpets. Everybody thinks they know about colour, what their favourite colours is. Mrs. Brooker's is baby blue, in case you needed to ask. The perception of colour. What I'm trying to do with this here is to show them how it is that their eye perceives colour. And I always say to them that this is what you'll learn in science when you do colour. Unfortunately, when you do light, but they haven't done that at that point in Year 7 then. Now, I could go on and tell you why you've seen what you've seen there, but I've got a funny feeling Sarah's going to say that we don't have time and that we need to move on.
I'm so sorry, but thank you, Peter, very much. It's already warned me I'm not allowed to say too many nice things, but Peter does use curiosity so much in his lesson. It's
Can I just say something? I've been described as being curious before, but I prefer inquisitive, okay?
Right, so I'm just going to, thank you, Peter. I'm just going to, those of it we're all hoping to learn from how we can reduce marking. And I was looking at it today, this exercise that I've taken directly from this book. Another one that was recommended to me at these Challenge the Gap meeting workshops that I'm still attending. And it's a fairly new book. We will pass this PowerPoint around afterwards, so if you want to read it, it's The Secret of Literacy. But actually, it's not just for English teachers, it's for all of us, and there's so many good tips in this book that I've already started using in my own lessons. And one that I'm going to show you, I think ticks a lot of these boxes. You know, for me it was a good question to stimulate the curiosity. The marking that I went on to do was differentiated. There was lots of thinking involved in the lesson, and I felt that we had a really engaged outcome through this task. So I'm just going to run it through with you, and maybe you can, through seeing this task, see areas of your own teaching that you could transfer this to. So colour, I'm doing colour with Year 7, and I start off getting them to think about what can a painting show that a photo can't. And they have a very lively discussion about this, and we talk a lot. And I've done this project for a couple of years now, and I'm aware that I don't capture that conversation all the time. We often talk about it, but there's no evidence of what's been said. So I've sort of adapted things as I've gone along, and I've asked them to write down what they can remember from the very lively discussion that we had initially. And this is one student's sort of her initial comments about these two images here. So they had to, the learning objectives was to identify some of the reasons artists choose to paint and use art language in your writing. So here she's talking about the painting, here she's talking about the photo. A painting can demonstrate emotion, e.g. tense, angry, frightened. Sometimes how the painting has been drawn, painted, shows you emotion. So having got them to do this in class, I went away, I did my marking in red, and you can see she's responded to this. I said, how? Can you give me an example of that? So she's talked about can show emotion, and she said sharp lines could be tense and angry. So that was the first part of the feedback that she acted on for me. But having read this book, I thought, right, I'm going to try this with this exercise. And David Didder said the following. I hope I'm pronouncing his surname right. So he said, before I wrote out comments on their homework sheet, I read this first, and I didn't write comments, I just gave them a question, as you see there. So he says, don't write out comments, you end up writing such similar comments across the class, and they won't read them anyway. Don't know about that, but he said that. Instead, get them to write them out. Choose 3 to 5 targets or questions before you start marking. Then scan their answers, choose the best fit between the student's work and the group target, and draw an icon. Well, I decided to go for a number. So I've had question 1, 2 and 3. 1 minute per book maximum. At the start of the next lesson, you write the targets on the board, the students write their targets into their books, and they get instant feedback they can take action on there straight away. So that's what I tried. So my 3 questions, this child had question 3 that she had to act on, and I had these 3 questions on the board. And depending on what question I'd written in their book, that was the one that they had to go back and act on. So what about the posture of the animal? How does this enhance the feeling conveyed? What about unreal colour? How does that help to enhance the feeling? How has contrast been used to convey feeling? And this was her response. So you can see she's written out her question, how has contrast been used to convey feeling, and this is her answer. The contrast has been used by showing the darkness and lightness of the two colours and showing that it is tense and scared. Shadows often create mystery and therefore create a tension in a piece. Now to me, I thought that that was a really fabulous bit of feedback. And you know, it really was a differentiated piece of work that I'd set exactly for her, and it worked to completely cover what perhaps hadn't been in her initial piece of writing. And it's this thing that we heard on Tim Oates, fewer things in greater depth. And I keep telling myself that. I don't have to rush on to the next thing. We can spend time going back to this question that we answered the previous week, but this time we can make sure that they've really got it and that everyone's being brought forward to the next stage, understanding everything that I was hoping to cover. And I think that that's been really effective. So if we go back, he says, your marking is your planning. He said, you know, great, fancy, interactive lessons, they're really good. But actually, every time you mark a set of books, that tells you what you need to be working on with the students next lesson. Your marking is your planning. And every pupil has an individual lesson plan based on your careful marking. So you're differentiating it by giving them a specific question that you want them to answer. If it's taken a minute to mark work, that should result in 10 minutes worth of improvement, and I really believe in that now. And I can tell you that on this task here, we spent, before they answered question 1 or 2, whichever one they've been given, we recapped, we talked again, and I shared with them, we're not going to write anything down until we've had a chance to speak about it first, because that will make our writing better. And Danielle and I were talking about this yesterday, that, you know, as teachers, we should be taking the students backstage. I've said this before, but we should be telling them why we're doing things the way we're doing them, because the research has proven that you will make a better job of this, and that is why we're doing it this way. So that, going back to the slide, that was really helpful. So the teacher writes 3 questions, so you know what you're really hoping that they're going to cover. You assign 1 to each of them, and they go on and do it. There was another thing that I hope, sorry, I'm thinking about time, just a quick one here. I thought this was really good. Writing alongside your pupils. Well, I would say working alongside your pupils, because I didn't sit and write with them, but I often set a task, a drawing task or a painting task, having read this now, and I'll sit down and do the task at the same time they're doing the task. And his rationale for it is as follows. Whenever I set a piece of extended writing, I write my own. Writing alongside pupils has several advantages. Firstly, they can't ask you questions and are forced to rely on their own resources for the duration of the task. Of course, I provide help in the form of clear success criteria and stuck stations around the room, which they can consult if confounded. It's also a great way to model the thinking required to write in a particular way. The benefits are huge. Not only do I now have a vast resource bank of essays I've written, it also made me more effective at teaching various aspects of the curriculum, because I've experienced the same difficulties and I know what problems my pupils are likely to encounter. And I really feel that that has been another thing from this book that's been really helpful to me. And, you know, having drawn us beside them, we're all drawing together, taking that back to the table and modelling, as you said, these tables where I'm struggling, showing them I struggled with this bit of my drawing. There's the history of where I went wrong, but, you know, you can see I've rubbed it out and I've worked back over it. And, you know, that's good to share that we don't always get it right. If we want our students, we want to develop a culture where they're okay to make mistakes and not worry about it, then we should be role modelling that, yeah, you know, we make corrections along the way when we reflect too. Okay, so that is me done. And